The crackling campfire cast long, flickering shadows across the circle of new rangers. Their eyes, wide with a mix of excitement and apprehension, reflected the dancing flames. The night was thick with the scent of pine and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. I leaned forward, feeling the weight of the story I was about to share. "Listen closely," I began, my voice low and steady. "Because what I'm about to tell you could save your life. Should you encounter a group of children playing in the woods at night, do not approach them. They are not children, but ancient spirits that take the form of innocence to trick unsuspecting victims." The new rangers exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard the tales, the whispered warnings passed down from seasoned rangers, but nothing could prepare them for the reality of Rule 7. "It was my 3rd year as a ranger," I continued, letting the memory wash over me. "I was patrolling the northern trails one night, under a full moon that lit up the forest like daylight. Everything was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that sets your teeth on edge. That's when I saw them." I paused, watching as the rangers leaned in, their faces tense with anticipation. There were 6 or 7 of them, standing in a clearing. At first, I thought they were lost children. They were dressed in old-fashioned clothes, like something out of a history book. I called out to them, but they just stood there, staring at me with eyes that seemed far too old for their young faces. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I recounted the details. I approached cautiously, every instinct telling me something was off. The closer I got, the more I noticed. Their skin was too pale, almost translucent in the moonlight. Their eyes followed me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. And when they smiled, it was a smile that didn't belong on a child's face. One of the rangers, a young woman named Emily, shivered, glancing nervously at the dark woods surrounding us. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I stopped in my tracks," I said, meeting her gaze. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. It was like they had some kind of hold on me. I tried to speak, to ask them who they were, but the words died in my throat. The campfire crackled, the only sound in the oppressive silence. Then, one of them stepped forward. A little girl, no more than 6 years old. She wore a white dress that looked like it belonged in a different century. She smiled at me, and it felt like ice water running through my veins. I could see the fear in the ranger's eyes, mirroring my own from that fateful night. She spoke, but it wasn't the voice of a child. It was ancient, echoing, as if it came from the depths of the forest itself. She said, "Come play with us, Jack. We've been waiting for you." The rangers gasped, and I nodded, feeling the weight of their horror. That's when I knew. These weren't children. They were something far older, far more dangerous. I took a step back, and the girl's smile widened. The others started to move towards me, their eyes glowing with a sinister light. I took a deep breath, the memory still vivid. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. I could hear their laughter, high-pitched and mocking, echoing through the trees. It felt like hours before I reached the safety of the ranger station, but it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. The rangers were silent, their faces pale and tense. That night, I couldn't sleep. Their faces haunted my dreams, and the cold touch of their presence lingered. It took weeks before I could walk the trails at night without looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see those ghostly children following me. I looked around the circle, meeting each ranger's gaze. If you see them, do not approach. Do not speak to them. Turn around and walk away as quickly and calmly as you can. Keep your wits about you, and remember, they feed on fear and curiosity. They lure you in with the promise of innocence, but they are anything but. The fire had dwindled to a low glow, casting eerie shadows across the clearing. The new rangers sat in a tense silence, absorbing the tale I had just shared. I could see the questions in their eyes, the need for understanding. They deserved to know the full truth. I couldn't shake the encounter, I began, breaking the silence. Those children haunted my thoughts, their eerie smiles and ancient eyes. I needed to know more. So I started digging into the history of Whispering Pines. Emily leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What did you find?" she asked. I took a deep breath, recalling the long hours spent poring over old records and forgotten diaries. I found fragments of a story, pieces of a puzzle that painted a grim picture. Whispering Pines wasn't always a park. Long before rangers walked these trails, it was a place of dark rituals and ancient curses. The rangers exchanged uneasy glances, the flickering firelight casting their faces in stark relief. I came across an old journal, kept by a local historian in the late 1800s. He wrote of a powerful curse that had been placed on the forest centuries ago, a curse that still lingered. I paused, letting the gravity of my words sink in. The story begins with a woman named Eliza Whitmore. She was a healer, some said a witch, who lived on the outskirts of the forest. She was known for her beauty and her mysterious powers, but also for her cruelty. She used her magic to lure travelers into the woods, promising them their heart's desires if only they would follow her deeper into the trees. The rangers leaned closer, their faces etched with fascination and dread. Many did, I continued, drawn by her promises. None of them were ever seen again. Over time, the villagers grew wary and fearful. They whispered of dark rituals and sacrifices, of spirits bound to the forest by Eliza's dark magic. The villagers decided they had to put an end to her reign of terror. A group of brave men and women, armed with faith and determination, ventured into the woods to confront her. The battle that ensued was long and bloody, but eventually they overpowered her. As she lay dying, Eliza cursed the forest with her final breath, vowing that her spirit would haunt the woods for all eternity. I could see the horror in their eyes, the realization that the curse was far older and more malevolent than they had imagined. Eliza's curse bound her spirit to the forest, and over time, it twisted and grew, feeding on the fear and curiosity of those who entered. The children's spirits are a manifestation of her dark magic, taking the form of innocence to lure in the unsuspecting. The night air grew colder, a chill settling over the campfire. "But why children?" asked Mark, one of the newer rangers. "Why do they take that form?" I nodded, understanding his confusion. Children symbolize innocence and vulnerability. It's the ultimate disguise, one that plays on our most basic instincts to protect and help. By appearing as lost children, the spirits can easily lure their victims deeper into the woods, where they reveal their true, malevolent nature. Emily shuddered, wrapping her arms around herself. What happens to those who follow them? I took a moment, recalling the grim tales I had uncovered. Those who follow the children are never seen again. The spirits feed on their fear and life force, trapping them in a nightmare from which there is no escape. The forest keeps their souls, adding to its collection of lost and tormented spirits. The rangers sat in stunned silence, the weight of the curse settling over them. "But there's more," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I found records of search parties sent into the woods to find the missing. Some returned empty-handed, deeply traumatized by what they had encountered. Others simply vanished, swallowed by the forest's darkness. I could see the understanding dawning in their eyes, the realization of the full extent of the danger we faced. The legend of the Whispering Woods grew from these tales, each generation adding to the lore. But the core truth remains. The forest is cursed, and those spirits are real. I paused, letting the silence stretch out. The only sound, the distant rustling of leaves in the night breeze. We must respect the rules, I continued, my voice firm. They are our only protection against the ancient evil that haunts these woods. Remember what you've heard tonight. Never let your guard down, and never, ever approach the children. Just as I was about to signal the end of our gathering, a faint, eerie sound reached our ears. It was distant, almost indistinguishable from the night sounds of the forest, but unmistakable to those who knew what to listen for. Children's laughter. The rangers stiffened, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and recognition. I stood up, every muscle tensing. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, my gaze fixed on the dark trees surrounding us. "It's them," I said, my voice grim. "The spirits." We extinguished the campfire, plunging the clearing into darkness, and set out away from the source of the laughter. The night seemed to grow colder, the air thick with an unnatural chill. The new rangers followed closely behind me, their faces pale and tense with anticipation. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the dense forest. The new rangers walked close together, their faces tense with the weight of the stories I had shared. I led the way, my senses alert to every rustle and whisper in the trees. Tonight, we would face the true test of our resolve. The forest was alive with the sounds of the night, crickets chirping, owls hooting, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Yet, beneath it all, there was an oppressive silence, a sense of something watching, waiting. As we ventured deeper into the woods, I could see the new rangers glancing nervously around, their breaths coming in quick, shallow gasps. "Stay close and keep your eyes open," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "Remember what I told you. If you see the children, do not approach, turn around, and walk away." Emily nodded, her face pale but determined. Mark and the others followed suit, their expressions set with grim resolve. We continued walking, the forest growing darker and more foreboding with each step. It wasn't long before we saw them. A group of children, their laughter echoing eerily through the trees, appeared in a small clearing up ahead. They were playing a game, chasing each other around in circles, their giggles rising and falling like the wind. They looked just as I had described them. Old-fashioned clothes, too pale skin, eyes that gleamed with an unnatural light. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Remember the rule," I whispered urgently. "Do not approach them." One of the new rangers, a young man named Brian, took a hesitant step forward. "But they look so real," he muttered, his voice tinged with a mix of fear and disbelief. "They're not," I snapped, grabbing his arm. "They're ancient spirits. They will lure you in and you will never return." Brian nodded, his face blanching as he took a step back. The children turned to face us, their eyes locking onto ours. For a moment, the forest was deathly silent, the only sound the rapid beating of our hearts. The girl in the white dress stepped forward, her smile wide and unsettling. "Come play with us," she called, her voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "We've been waiting for you." I felt the pull, the almost irresistible urge to step forward, to answer her call, but I knew better. "Turn around," I ordered, my voice firm. "We're leaving." As we turned to leave, the children's laughter grew louder, more insistent. "Don't go!" they cried, their voices taking on a desperate edge. "Stay with us! Play with us!" We quickened our pace, the sound of their laughter and pleas following us through the trees. The forest seemed to close in around us, the shadows growing darker and more oppressive. I could feel the spirit's presence, a cold, malevolent force pressing down on us. "Keep moving," I urged, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "Don't listen to them." We broke into a run, the forest a blur around us as we raced back toward the safety of the ranger station. The children's voices echoed in our ears, a haunting symphony of lost innocence and malevolence. I could feel their eyes on us, watching, waiting for us to falter. Finally, we burst out of the trees and into the clearing around the ranger station. We stumbled to a halt, gasping for breath, our hearts pounding in our chests. The children's laughter faded into the distance, leaving behind an eerie silence. We stood there for a moment, the weight of what we had just experienced settling over us. The new rangers were pale and shaken, their eyes wide with the horror of the encounter. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my own nerves. "Now you understand," I said quietly. "The children are not what they seem. They are ancient spirits, bound to the forest by a dark curse. You must always be vigilant, always respect the rules." Emily nodded, her face pale but resolute. "We will," she said, her voice firm. "We won't let our guard down." The others murmured their agreement, their expressions set with grim determination. We had survived the encounter, but the memory of those malevolent spirits would haunt us all. As we turned to head inside, I glanced back at the dark forest, my heart heavy with the knowledge of the ancient curse that lay within. The children would be waiting, their laughter echoing through the trees, always watching, always waiting for the next unsuspecting victim to fall into their trap. We walked into the ranger station, the door closing behind us with a heavy thud. The forest outside seemed to breathe, the shadows lengthening as the night wore on, and in the distance, faint and haunting, I could still hear the children's laughter, a chilling reminder of the malevolent spirits that lurked within the heart of Whispering Pines.